It does make sense. We see it and we don't. We hear it and we don't. We feel it and we don't. We taste it and we don't. We smell it and we don't. We don't pay attention. We know it and our minds think it isn't true. Sometimes I know the truth. I sit still and I listen inside. And I paint what I find. And I hope it is true. Sometimes I know and sometimes I don't. And I sit still and listen. And I start again. And I paint what I find. And I share what I know. And sometimes I don't. Sometimes I am, and sometimes I am not the I that I am. Sometimes I draw a line and I am present. And sometimes I draw a line and I am not aware of that and stop. And I start again. I do this again and again, and sometimes I find myself in front of a painting. By the way, it is true that a painting paints itself, but that requires your complete presence, your most skillful concentration, and all-embracing compassion in one. Only when everything is in alignment will the painting be you, and you the painting, and the painting itself. Sometimes I sit and close my eyes, and an idea comes to me. I see and I paint. Sometimes I sit and my eyes are wide open, and I see, and an idea comes to me, and I paint. Sometimes I sit and I think what I see is true, and I stop. And sometimes I know what I see is true, and I paint. Sometimes I sit still, and no idea comes to me, and I paint. And an idea comes to me. Sometimes an idea just comes to me and I listen, and sometimes I don't. I wasn't here, and the idea disappears. Sometimes an idea comes to me, and this appears, and I search for it, and I can't find it. And sometimes I leave it alone, and I forget it. The idea reappears, and I paint. Often I don't paint anymore. I sit and I listen. And sometimes I find it, and sometimes I don't. I call it ART. A for awareness, R for right practice, T for finding truth. Before an idea, there is no thing. After an idea, there is something. Sometimes I find something, and sometimes I don't. And sometimes I learn from it. Whether it's relevant or not, I find out when I do the work. When I don't do the work, I will never find out. Sometimes what I find is true, and sometimes it is not. And when I know it is not, I start again. I call it ART. A for action, R for repetition, T for truth. Art is a process, a continuum, beginningless, endless. Sometimes I know there is a product worth sharing, and I will try my best to promote it. And sometimes someone listens, and often not. That is the product you will be able to see when you sit still and listen. ART. A is for appreciation, R is for respect, T is for trust. Art is more than what we think it is. Art is not artificial, and it is not an artifact. It does not exist as an object or an idea, not even as a feeling. It just is. Not all art is for everybody, but art is all we are. A for alignment, R for reflection, T for total acceptance in the realization of truth.